My name is Amy Alden, and I am a grateful alcoholic. I have the pleasure of introducing your speaker tonight. And I have known Courtney for about 9.5 years now, and have had the honor of being her sponsor, which has also been a job. But one of the really cool things about being able to be of service in Alcoholics Anonymous is you get the privilege of watching somebody's light come on. I always cry when I introduce her. I don't know why. We've been through a lot. We've been through cancer. We've been through marriage. We've been through breakups. We've been through dogs dying. And she's been beside me through all of that. In the 12 and 12, in the forward, it says the 12 steps are a set of principles, spiritual in nature, that, hold on. 12 steps are a set of principles, spiritual in nature, where if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happy and usefully whole. And I have watched that happen with Courtney, so I'm really excited to hear her story.
I want to thank Chuck Mitchell for dragging me up here tonight. Hey everybody, my name is Courtney and I am an alcoholic and a drug addict. If I could, just for a moment, well, first off, my sobriety date is October 13th, 2012. I'm very grateful for that. And I get sober and I actually, couldn't find a job. You will learn, obviously, but I was a boat captain and I moved to Austin for another treatment center. And I came to Austin and there wasn't very many boat captain jobs here. Go figure, right? And so I was doing these odd jobs. And then this lady was like, you need to come work for us. Like, okay. And I worked here for about a year, a little over a year, before it was BRC. So I understand what you guys, clients now, it's clients instead of residents, but I understand what you guys go through and the challenges, not only because I've worked here, but because I've also been in your shoes, even though I wasn't at this facility. And I want, if you feel comfortable, any loved one who is here tonight or family member that is here tonight supporting a loved one in treatment, can you please raise your hands? Y'all would give them a round of applause. And I say that because my mom was my biggest supporter, even though I tore her to pieces. And you guys know what I'm talking about. We know every button to push, everything we can do to hold them emotionally hostage so they will do what we want them to do. Okay? So give them a break. All right, so a little bit about me. I'm crazy, but I love to have fun. And I grew up in a small town called Hurley, Mississippi. I was born in Mobile, Alabama. I was raised on the Mississippi-Alabama state line, and I didn't really need for anything as a kid. I had a loving family. I had a roof over my head. I have a little brother, and my parents were together. It was just, we were country. My struggle with that, though, is that I grew up in a really strict religion. My dad's side was Pentecostal and my mom's side was Church of God. And what that means is the difference in the two is one gets touched by, the Holy Spirit falls out on the floor and starts speaking in tongues, and the other doesn't. But all of my family have PhDs, Pentecostal hairdos. We have, I couldn't cut my hair, I couldn't watch TV, I couldn't, no makeup, no jewelry. I looked different than other people. Growing up my entire life, I was loved, but I always felt different, right? No drugs, no alcohol in my house, but I had that spirituality, right? And when at the multiple treatment centers that I went through, it was like, why me? You know, I've been to church my whole life. Why am I the drug addict and the alcoholic? Why am I the one with the behavior issues? Well, we're taught that we have the spiritual malady, right? That no matter how much love, for me, no matter how much love you give me, no matter how many materialistic things I get in life, no matter what partner is next to me, it is not going to be enough until I take the first sip of alcohol. And man, that was enough, right? So growing up, fifth grade, my mom started letting me wear pants to school. Oh my God, that was a big deal. I felt like everybody. I looked like everybody. I had these long jean skirts. You guys have seen them in the grocery stores. You know what I'm talking about. You look at them and you're like, what is going on? Right? So that was me. And then I got to wear pants and I fit in. But as soon as I got home, I'd have to change back into my clothes. Right. I was very athletic, always been really outgoing. And I was never really supported in sports, or I used to love to ride. Well, I still love to ride horses. I love horses. And it's hard to ride horses in a jean skirt. So I learned to live this double life. I learned to be that chameleon. And of course that shows up on my character defects, right? And so I would blend in with whatever crowd I needed to feel a part of. Okay. And my dad was in the picture, but our, mom and dad roles were he works, he brings the money, mom stays with the kids, cooks, cleans, that's the roles. Better not get them mixed up because dad is emotionally unavailable. Back then it wasn't physically abusive to take a belt out and, have bruises on your legs and stuff like that. Emotionally abusive, and then you have the religious aspect of it. And so I did everything I could to stay away from the family. And I've always had daddy issues. And so, I'm 15, 16 years old and my parents get a divorce. My mom gets shunned from the church and she takes my little brother to move to Panama City Beach, Florida. Has anybody heard of Panama City Beach, Florida? What are you doing there? You party. You what?
Sin.
You sin. Oh my God. You've been there, haven't you? Gotta watch out for this guy, girl. So I don't talk to him. Okay? Yeah, when you, no matter where you go, vacation destination, if you go on vacation, sober or not, I'm going to spend more money. I'm going to drink more mocktails and eat more food and do fun things. And that, after I moved to Panama City Beach, Florida, that is the way my life was. And everybody around me was doing it. It was perfectly normal. And well, Katrina happened. I was living with my dad. Mom took little brother. I wanted to play sports in Mississippi. Katrina happens, and then school gets canceled, and I hated my dad, so I moved to Panama City Beach, Florida. And like I said in the beginning, I used that divorce as a way to poke at my mom and make her feel bad for moving me. Today, I know it was my choice. But then you better believe I made her feel that. So I got to do whatever I wanted to do. I started drinking because I hadn't until then. And I'd skip school, new kid trying to fit in, right? This feeling again comes up, right? That I'm alone, I'm not a part of, and I'm country. They always called me country or Mississippi. Whatever. So I joined sports, right? I started getting some friends and they buried kegs on the beach and cover it up and then go tap it halfway through school. And it was great. And so that's what I did. I passed in school and class. I moved out at 17 and I moved in with a guy pattern in my life, right? If you can't give me what I want, I'll find somebody who can. And they're usually really broken, but I'm going to fix them because I'm that powerful. And so, and what I mean by fix them is I had and still struggle with, right? I have this self-righteousness, this controlling personality, I have a large energy. And I know how to use that energy to make you do what I want you to do. And so I would find these guys who, poor guys, didn't know what to do with me. So they just listened to me. You laugh, but it's true. So I moved in with a guy at 17 and I told myself, like, I got all this. We moved into this shitty apartment. Sorry, I cuss a lot too. Moved into this apartment. It was right on the beach. They were going to bulldoze it down because it was so disgusting. And I had all the furniture and everything, and I thought I did it on my own. Guess what? I was unaware that I moved out on Mother's Day. And I took all the furniture that my mom bought me and said it was mine, right? And that was made in amends, getting sober. So drinking, I get my captain's license. I start making 6 figures. I'm pulling banana boats. That's what I had to do, the little jet skis and banana and you throw people off. That's what I did. And then I graduated to doing boat dolphin tours and flying carousel. And it was a man's world. And all along, I mean, that job provided for me the perfect atmosphere to drink and use drugs. If you did not come in stoned or high on cocaine, or if you didn't drink the kegerator at the end of work, then you just weren't a part of it. That is just how it was. And so I fit in perfectly, right? And at this point, I could control it. I got arrested for my first felony arrest for a controlled substance, and I blamed the cop because it was his first arrest. I blamed the people at the party that we were going to smoke out, in this parking lot, and like 5 cops, arrest me. A little obsessed, right? First arrest, 18, and I have to do these, these weird meetings where you get this paper signed, and I showed up, messed up the entire time, and separated myself from every individual in there. It wasn't until I got sober the first time I went to treatment that I realized those were AA meetings. I mean, that is how unaware I was and how separate I kept myself. And it's a pattern. I will separate myself from people because I didn't have that specific experience, right? And today I know it's not, how many times I got arrested or how many times I go to rehab. It is what alcohol and drugs does for me and the 3 parts of that disease that makes me an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I had to figure that out over and over and over again until it settled in me and I could connect to that. Because I didn't want to be a drug addict. I didn't want to be an addict. I wanted to be successful. I didn't want a badge put on me that people looked at me differently, but that's who I was. And so I'm making good money, break up with a boyfriend, get another boyfriend, right? And by this time, I think I was 21 and I was starting to nod out. Opiates were my deal. Florida had a lot of pill mills. I made money, so I sponsored people. I sponsored them to go down south and get a bunch of prescriptions and bring them back to me so I could use them and sell them. And because I, hadn't crossed that line quite at that point. And so I started nodding off on boats. That does not look good when you have people up in the air and your captain falls off the boat. It's not a good look, right? And so something had to change, right? So I got asked to do something, drug test, and I went to my first treatment center. Again, separated myself. There was a marijuana leaf etched into my mirror, and I told everybody at that rehab that this is a sign from God that I can still smoke weed. So I didn't believe I had a problem with alcohol, didn't think weed was anything bad, but the opiates, I knew I had started to have this. I needed them. I needed them to go to work. I needed them to show up to family functions. I needed them. It was my solution. I was not okay if I didn't have it. And I showed up to work every day. That's another thing that I separated myself from other people, is people would lose their jobs. I showed up. I must not be an addict or an alcoholic. Left that treatment center really quickly, moved back in with a boyfriend. We just sold a little bit of weed here and there. Didn't drink for about a month. Got a sponsor, looked at a packet that she gave me, circled character defects, never worked a step. And so, you know, by this time, I'm starting to get in abusive relationships. Remember, I have a large energy. I would love to say it was always one-sided, but if you poke me, I'm gonna fight. It is not a very ladylike thing to do, for your boyfriend to have bruises and bite marks, but that is who I am. When you keep drugs away from me or alcohol away from me, or if I don't get enough, right? And so I go to one more treatment center, didn't work. By this time, my mom is like, what is going on? You know, by this time, I'm not able to pay my bills. I am starting to pawn things. I'm showing up to work still, right? Neighbors, friends, they're starting to not be around me very much. I'm starting to isolate and just be with a boyfriend. And so I go to treatment again. I guess that didn't work. My mom gave me a gas card, and she was trying to do everything she could to help him. You know, this time, like my mom's seeing somebody, you know, when I got arrested, he was an attorney, got me out of jail free card, right? I have my captain's license, and for the Coast Guard, you have to have this random drug consortium card. And so they can send you a letter, and you have to drug test within 48 hours. And I could pass those drug tests because I was so skinny. Because I wasn't eating, right? Because if you eat, then you can't really feel the opiates, right? And so I had to pass this drug test, passed it. And all that taught me was that I'm just getting by with this stuff. It's not that bad. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I skated by all these, I mean, I could have killed somebody, right? Like I skated by all these consequences and thought I was okay, right? And I was fooling myself, not fooling anybody else. And my mom gave me this gas card because I'm out of money, you know, I'm making good money. And I can't figure out why I'm not able to pay my bills. And of course, the good enabler helps me pay bills because they feel bad. They want me to be successful. Just stop drinking, just quit using. It's the boyfriend. You probably need to break up with him. That's why you were this way, right? And she would give me this card so I couldn't get money from it. And so I would sit at those gas stations and I would wait for people to walk in with cash. And I would put an extra $5 in their tank and take their cash so I can go get it. Right? I've stolen many things from my mom and my stepdad that I go and pawn. I mean, I knew every pawn shop in the area. And so at this point, I had addiction's really bad. I'm dead inside. It's no longer working for me. I can't even give people money to go get the pills, right? I'm starting to buy, starting to use heroin, and it wasn't enough. I could not do enough, and I was just ready to die. Multiple times trying to kill myself, or, coming to and like, why am I still here? I didn't know, right? Like if there really is a God, because I'm still angry at God, right? I'm still angry at the church. If there is a God, why am I going through this, right? There's parts of the book where it talks about that. And it just gets to be my experience. And so my best friend at the time broke up with boyfriend. I move in with mom because I've got restraining order on the boyfriend, very abusive relationship. And I asked my mom if the best friend could come and stay at the house because she's, broken up with the boyfriend and they live together. And she said yes. And we had talked about killing ourselves. And I went to work, boyfriend calls, what did she do? She answered the phone. She went over there and they took a nap and she ended up grabbing his gun and killing herself. And she had the balls to do it. My ego is so big that I couldn't do it, right? And boyfriend, his name is Sunshine, he called me, and I'm telling you, this is a trap house, right? Calls me, we clean up everything. They were making GHB because we were also doing that, all types of things, but clean everything up before we call the cops. And that pushed me into a really, really dark place. But instead of feeling those feelings, we said, well, let's get as messed up as we can to celebrate this girl's life. And I'm grateful for her. Because that pushed me to a point of willingness and desperation to go to treatment again. And I'm one of these believers, you know, you can go to all the treatment centers in the world and not get sober. You guys are given the solution. It's up to you whether you're going to take it or not. You've got to have that desperation, right? Willingness, open-mindedness, honesty. And I couldn't be honest with myself. I didn't know how to be honest with myself. I was just in pain. And so my mom, she tells me, you know, I'm gonna take you to treatment, and this is the last time. And I've heard this several times. And I'll never forget, I was in her hallway and I was on my phone and I was nodded out and she was talking to me and she slapped the shit out of me. She said, this is it. You either get this or I'm done. And something had shifted in her. She had completely given up. She did not know who was in front of her. She has done everything to help that person, but she gave up. Right? There were no reservations for her, which meant I really couldn't. But I manipulated my way, you know, into letting her. I owed the dope man some money, and I needed to pay this guy money. He had a Hitler tattoo on his leg. If that just tells you a little bit about him. So we stopped at his house. My poor mother stopped at my dope man's house, gave me money, let me walk in the door while she's doing circles outside, and I'm in there getting high because I was not going to go to treatment until I could get high. And somebody suggested for her to get as much drugs as I needed for the 2-day drive to Texas. And at every gas station we stopped at, she would hand me my medicine until we got to treatment. And I went to a treatment center this last time in Kerrville, Texas. It's not the best treatment center in the world, but again, I had desperation. My desperation looks like I'm still going to fight you. I still am going to tell you that AA is a cult. I'm still going to tell you that it is not going to work for me. And I'm still going to tell you that I'm not going to believe in a God who shames me and, you know, tells me I'm a sinner for wearing pants. Not going to work. But I'll go and I want something to work. And so I go to this treatment center and there's I'm there for the first 2 weeks and DEA is all around. All my friends are getting arrested, right? Doors getting kicked in, all this stuff I'm hearing from this because I'm writing to people that I'm not supposed to. You know, I jotted down some phone numbers and some addresses. Y'all are laughing. The things that we're not supposed to do, right? Because I love the game. I love the game of, you know, it puts that energy in me. That game made me feel powerful. And remember, lack of power is my dilemma, right? So anything that makes me feel powerful, you better believe I'm going to do it, sober or not, right? So I'm in this treatment center and, you know, there's Suboxone taper. It was cold in Texas and all my clothes was not approved. So I had sweatpants. And I was there for 47 days and I gained 40 pounds in 47 days. And I started the work, okay? And I walked in that treatment center thinking I looked good, right? So I started the work and I started to have these experiences. I did this little God journal because I was just angry at God for being in this position, right? And I just started writing that stuff out. And it's so simple, right? That is prayer for me. Right? Cussing God out when, you know, life is not treating me well is better than cussing, other people out. Maybe wrong. If I'm delusional, you'll let me know. But I was so angry, in so much pain, and I started to have an experience. And I decided to go to church for the first time when I was in treatment. I had my little buddies, we always followed people everywhere we went, we had to save seats and all this, and they wanted to go to church. And I was like, okay, whatever. So we pile on the bus and we go to church, and there's a little old lady in the front, and she's shaking everybody's hands. I love old people, you guys, like shaking hands, welcoming us. We go to the church service. I'm in pants, I'm in rehab, I'm in church. Oh my God, it's gonna, engulf in flames. It didn't. And I had an amazing experience. Like the songs, people were welcoming. I felt a part of. And so we go, they pray for us, they tell us to come back. They said the serenity prayer. I was like, okay, this is cool. And we go, we leave, and there were, the little old lady was at the door again, and shook all of her hands. And we get in the bus and we back up. And there's an F-250 right next to the bus. And the tech, I don't know what happened, but clips the end of that F-250 and pushes it into two other cars right next to it. And that little lady was in between those cars. Right. And so we piled out, and we all, they life flighted her out. She ended up passing away. And all I could tell myself was, God doesn't want me in there. Right. It was the first experience, first traumatic experience, first experience that I did not know how to handle my emotions or get vulnerable. The first time ever that I did it without using drugs and alcohol. I've been to church twice since. I have nothing against religion. I don't go because I have my spirituality. But I can get through anything with the support of people, with the support of God. And so right then I told myself that, maybe that God wasn't the God that I need to go, right? So I found my own understanding of God. And I was anti-sober living, like, no, I could stay in track houses that look nicer than these sober houses. You're gonna squeeze me in 5 people in a room with like 2 bathrooms in the house, 15 people in the house. No, I don't think so. Do you know who I am? Right? And my little friend that I went to church with, she was gonna go with her parents to Austin for sober living and do a tour. And I was like, oh, get out of jail free card. I get a pass to go tour sober living. So you better believe I'm going to leave that treatment center to go look at sober livings. Right? So I went and looked at sober livings, and I was with my friend's parents, and it got approved. And we went and we sat and we talked to the house manager, and it was something came over me. And I was like, hey, can I use y'all's cell phone? I need to call my mom. And I called my mom and I said, hey, I think I want to go to sober living. I think she almost had a heart attack. Like, what? Okay, sure. Because she's willing to support me if I was moving in a healthy path. So she said, I will pay, not right then, but later on we talked about it. I made a decision to go to sober living, but I'm only doing 3 months, and then I'm going back to Florida, going back to the dog, the family, the job, the boyfriend that I had the restraining order on. And she was going to cut me off at 3 months. And so 2.5 months comes around. I go to Austin. I get a sponsor. Her name was Lindsay Force, and she was a force to reckon with. And I wanted what she had. And so I tour with 3 female sponsors, right? It's like, oh my God, I'm so scared. Please sponsor me. Because she walked in a room and people gravitated around her. She was always there early. She had a loud energy. She helped clean up. And she had this energy that I wanted. There was something about her that I wanted. And boy, she gave it to me. I've cussed her out many times, I promise. And so I go and I'm doing, you know, step work, and she's having me be of service. I mean, quick through the steps. And she actually worked here, as Benchmark. And so I have gone through the steps like you guys do. That's how I take my sponsees through the steps. And at 2.5 months, my little roommate, you know, in treatment that I connected to was going to move out and get an apartment. Well, I said I'd make a 3-month commitment. But there's people relapsing and sober living. It's like a revolving door. The rules are stupid, right? Like I could do better outside of here because this isn't a healthy environment for me. Sound familiar? Yeah. Anything to get my way, right? And my sponsor, she told me, Courtney, you can move out if you're taking people through the steps, if you're actively working the steps, and if you're not complaining about other people. If you are not doing those 3 things, you need to stay. That has followed me through relationships, through my job, right? If I'm not doing those things, I need to stay where I am. Because you better believe if I quit my job, or if I move out of sober living, or if I leave this boyfriend, that I'm going to run into the same problem. And if I don't know how to fix it, what do? Well, I drink to use. That's my habit. So I've got to work through it. Oh my God, that means I have to like do inventory and bring God into it, right? And talk to other people and be of service. And so I did it. I stayed there for 8 months, and they like had to kick me out. They said, Courtney, quit robbing other people of an experience, right? Because it was a safe place. It taught me accountability. It taught me fellowship, right? It taught me how to have fun in recovery. And I will tell you, when I mean, even today, I do not do things perfectly. When I first got sober, they were, you know, they tell you not to get in a relationship. Well, that was out the door before I even left treatment, right? Because I need to feel that spiritual melody. I get out of treatment, first thing I do, go to 6th Street with a group of my sober house buddies, right? Because that's a smart idea, right? But I know today I can go anywhere if I'm spiritually fit. I wasn't spiritually fit then, but I had an experience, and that's something else my sponsor told me when I first got sober is, you know, I was seeing these guys because I didn't know how to do life, and she didn't judge me. She said, Courtney, I don't care what you do. If you want to be the AA whore, go for it. You know what I'm talking about. Guys, girls, you go to a meeting, you get that eye contact, you get that warm, fuzzy feeling, and you don't hear any solution in that meeting. You are wondering who that girl or that guy is, and you go to that meeting only because that person's there. Right? Sick, man, we're sick. And so, you know, she was like, you're going to have an experience. You're either going to make healthy choices and learn from it, or you're going to make unhealthy choices and you're going to learn from it. I'm not here to judge. And thankfully, I figured out, you know, how to do relationships somewhat. I'm married. He's in recovery. He's a badass person, super sweet, not who I would pick, but my standards. We've been together for about 9 years, married for 6. And that's not the guy that I was staring at in the meeting rooms, right? I was staring at the ones who were sick. And so yeah, I get out of sober living and I'm trying to find a job. I start, you know, I get to the point of, you know, well, let me back up. Step 1, I knew I was powerless, right? I'm gonna open my book. I'll forget the steps because I'm nervous. You know, we admitted we were powerless and our lives was unmanageable. That was easy. The unmanageability part, like took a little while, right? It took me a little while because I thought that I was just so important and like so strong and independent and I could do anything I put my mind to. But I mean, I was sleeping with multiple people. Like, that's manageable, right? And I can get that way in recovery. Absolutely. And so that, I worked through that. And then step two, I mean, after that church experience, it was like, in working through those emotions sober, it was like, I know there is a God. And I knew there was a God. My first concept of God was the waves. I love to surf. I'm a big water person, and I've almost died from the waves just taking me down. And it's way powerful than me. And it worked, but it had to grow. It still has to grow. Like, I cannot rest on my laurels of what my idea of God was a year ago. I cannot do it, because I will become super angry. That's the first emotion I go to, which is driven by fear, right? I get fearful of life. And so I knew there was something greater than myself. And then I think it turned into my sponsor, really. But that wasn't big enough either. She had something that I wanted. Is it bad weather or kid being a duck? Turn yourself. Man, made a decision, turn the wheel in their lives. I was taught like will, lives, thoughts, actions, right? That is like super hard for me still today. I will get, time or like more achievements in life, life is going good, and I think I did it. That is not true. I did not do anything except take action, right? And so that was super hard for me. Still is. I still struggle with it. I will never forget, and it's happened with both sponsors. So my first sponsor moved away back to where she was, and I met Amy in school because I decided to go to school. And I met Amy in school, and she started taking me through the steps again. And so even with my first sponsor and with Amy, when we got to the third step, I was like, okay, I'll do the third step, first sponsor, and come out to my house. Okay, perfect. And she said, go out and smoke a cigarette, because I chain smoked like crazy at that point. And I was like, okay, I just smoked one, but I'll smoke another one. And I come back into her house, and there's a big book laying on the ground with 2 pillows on the ground. And I'm like, what did I just watch? But I was like, okay, whatever. So, and Amy has done this to me. God, hold your hands. Like, that is so vulnerable. And all that church stuff from a little kid comes up, and I get to work through that. Right? This gets to be different, or it can be the same. And I can say, nope, not doing it, and end up right where I've been. And I know that hasn't worked for me. So let me try to humble myself and do something different. And I was. And I felt this amazing experience afterwards. I'm just kidding. I held this person's hand. We did the third step prayer. I was crying, and then she told me to go home. And it evolved, right? It continuously evolves over time. And I'm so grateful for that. And so step 4, I do long form inventory, work on inventory, fears bracketed on the outside. And as a kid, I was molested. And I never told anybody that. It was a family member. And I will tell my family in AA, but I'm not going to tell my parents that. I think that would cause more harm. And so I told my sponsor that, and she's like, all right, read the backside. I didn't know anything on the backside. I was like, I don't have a part. She's like, oh, yes, you do. I was like, what is my part? I'm getting defensive by this point. And she's like, you cannot tell me that you haven't used this in almost, if not every one of your relationships. And I shut up real quick, because I used it to get sex. I used it to play a victim. I used it as a weapon. And I can still do it in my marriage. I have a part in everything. And I'm very aware of that. Sometimes it's hard for me to see it. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but I feel like over time, that window of like me resisting gets shorter and shorter. And I hope it's like no window, I just see it. So step 4 was big. And you know, that was step 5, but I didn't have a huge experience again. And so I'm comparing myself to other people of like, you know, they're seeing brighter colors and they feel the weight lifted off. I felt like a piece of shit. You know, I felt miserable afterwards. I felt like, oh my God, like I thought that all these people did this stuff to me and it's their fault, but I realized I'm the common denominator, right? We get to see those patterns and what belief systems and fears drive us to take those, you know, actions. And sober, it was like, am I getting sicker sober? No, I'm becoming more aware. And I get to see it even more, even clearer today. And so I've had footstep experiences. Amy has a dog who's from like Taiwan. He has immigration papers. He was on a meat truck. I love animals. And so this dog used to like shake so much. His name's Wrigley. This dog used to shake so much that there would be like an outline of hair on the ground because he was so anxious. And I'll never forget, I was doing inventory. You know, I'm moving through life and I decide like to get married, and I thought that my marriage, and I actually shared this at a meeting last night, but I thought my marriage, I didn't love this person because I felt like I would be okay if I didn't have him in my life. In all my other relationships, I needed that person. That person filled that spirituality, right? And this person didn't. I had a God of my own understanding. I had women and men at the program. I had sponsees, right? And I wrote inventory. It was on marriage and then on my dad, because I'm getting married and who's going to walk me down the aisle? I've done so much inventory on my dad because I've blamed him for so many years. And I did not want him to walk me down the aisle. And I did that inventory, and this dog climbs up on the couch as I'm bawling. Right? And that was a cool experience for me, right? That was a spiritual experience for me. And they're not always like, that may not be, you know, amazing, but it was to me, right? It was enough. You know, something was there with me. And so I have had footstep experiences and experiences of reading inventory where I have felt lighter and I have, you know, really felt the presence of God. And I'll never forget, you know, Lindsay told me, she said, Courtney, it's okay that you didn't feel that. You know, it says in the fifth step promises, we begin that experience. We begin to feel the nearness of our creator. You know, and if we're in treatment doing it, we're like, oh, we're good after step 5, right? I'm cured. But it's just a beginning. And so, you know, step 6, love it in the 12 and 12, right? 6 and 7, there's not a lot in the book. I do not believe that I have these list of character defects that are just magically going to get removed for me. I believe that when they become objectionable to me, and when they stop serving me, not me and God, when they stop serving me, God will help me not participate in them anymore. And that's my experience, that's my belief. But it just, I thought that you wrote this down, you did an hour, you took the book off the shelf, like they tell you, and you do this hour of meditation, and then you're good after that. When I am not connected to something greater than myself, I'm right back in self, and I'm right back in those character defects, because those character defects have protected me my entire life. It has kept me separate from other people. It served a purpose for me, just like drugs and alcohol did. 8 was easy to make a list. There was a lot of people that I was unwilling to make amends to, and I did ask God to help me make amends to that. There were several people that it took a few years for me to become willing to make those amends. My grandmother was she helped raise me as a kid, and she was super religious, right? And she was in Houston. I was actually working here at the time, and I had like the 3 to 11 shift. And so I decided the night before to take a pass to go to Houston to see my aunt. My grandmother was there. I was going to make amends, and I was going to eat a little bit of, it was Christmas, eat a little bit of food. And then you guys have like a great Christmas spread here. So I was going to come back, eat some food, and work, right? And I went and I made that amends to my grandmother, and I don't know what happened, but I ended up like on my knees, holding her hand, bawling my eyes out, scared to death. And she told me she loves me for who I am, right? Because I needed to make amends to her, because towards the end of my addiction, my grandmother came to visit because my mom didn't trust me at the house. I'm like 23 years old at this time, living with my mom. And she knew something was going on. And I told my grandmother that I was late on a car payment. Grandmother wrote a check. We went to the bank, cashed it. We were supposed to go shopping. I met my drug dealer in a Starbucks parking lot, went into the bathroom, gave him the money, got high, and I was completely out of it the rest of the time with my grandmother. I'll never, there was a time where I started getting on Facebook when I got sober, and my mom told me that, grandma called me and was like, what's different about Courtney? And I hadn't made that amends at that time, but she saw something. She saw a light change, right? Because I had started to tap into power, and I started to change. And so that was probably one of my best amends. I've made some financial amends that, I stole a lot of money. I was a bartender at off season, and obviously stole a lot of money from them and drinks. And so I put a note, he was out of town, put a note in there with a wad of cash in a Christmas card, and I haven't heard from him, and hopefully he got that right. I do believe that he may be one of us, and hopefully one day he will reach out. So amends are, man, in my marriage, my husband is so good. He will make amends just like that. Me, I'm like, no, I'm gonna play the silent game for a little while, make you square. Still today, I still use that, right? I have to make those amends. I get to make those amends, because if I don't, I'm disconnected from the sunlight and spirit. I cannot be of service to anybody else. I can talk the program all day long, but how do I show up at work? How do I show up around you guys? How do I show up at home in AA meetings? It's gotta be all congruent. And it wasn't for a while. This guy named Mike, I used to go to Club 101. That was my home group. Forgot, I do have a home group. I have a service sponsor. This is my grand sponsor. She's got like 43 years sober. I want to be that lady, right? But I remember I was like seeing all these guys in the room, and I was outside Club 101, chain smoking, of course, and this guy named Mike comes up to me. He always had some dark share, but always had solution. And he came up to me, I was with my little sober house buddies, and he said, girl, you're nothing but a pretty face. You're not gonna stay sober. And I'm one that's gonna prove people wrong, right? But I lived that double life. When I was in the rooms, I had these powerful shares, or what I thought was powerful, right? All ego, right? Beginning sponsorship, all ego, page numbers, all this stuff. And it was bullshit. That couldn't last long. And I'm grateful it didn't, because today I get to be congruent. I'm the crazy, goofy, loud person all around today. And that's because of it. And some of my normal friends are like, God, Courtney, I could not imagine you under the influence. I'm like, you don't want to. Oh, I don't want to imagine it anymore, and it's crazy. Every time I was like, oh my God. Amends, continue to take personal inventory, 10 steps. I go back and forth with this, right? I was taught like I need to make 10 steps all the time, every week. But I also believe that if I'm connected to something greater than myself and I'm living in, the presence of God, I'll say God today, in the best way that I can, I don't need to do 10 steps every day. And so I've gone through recovery. I've gone back and forth of like, am I connected to God if I'm needing to do a ton of 10 steps? And I believe that it is important for me to do 10 steps, to call people, to ask for solution, right? Not just gossip or, complain, like, this is my problem. What do I need to do? Help somebody else out, whether it's just calling somebody, asking how their day is doing, getting out of self, right? If I need to do that 10 steps, you better believe I need to get out of my head and I need to get out of self. Right? Step 11, continue, right? It says continue to take personal inventory, and when wrong, promptly admit it. I fall short on that, like I told you earlier. My husband's promptly admitted it. I'm like, no, wait 24 hours. I could have progress there. And those nightlies. I suck at nightlies. Absolutely suck at nightlies. I will go through phases of writing it in a journal. I'll go through notes on my phone, and then I'll get the app, right? Like Courtney, just pick one. It takes like 3 minutes to really do. And when I am very active with it, bringing it into morning meditation, I don't show up like an asshole. Go figure. And it's that simple. And we get well in life and we forget it. And then 12 and 12, I think it's step 11. It's like, it's like, notice when you're resting on your laurels, don't beat yourself up over it, and take action. Like, that's all we have to do. That's all I have to do is notice it, have somebody hold it out to me, and then pick up the tools. It's worked this far. Was it going to quit working? I don't think so. Right? 12. Man, step 12. When I first started sponsoring, well, when I was first asked to sponsor, I was like, I don't know how to sponsor people. And Rosie said, Courtney, you can't fuck them with mercenary. Okay, good. Good thing sponsors aren't keeping us sober, right? Because I did a horrible job of it. Like I told you, I sponsored out of ego. I wanted them to get it. I wanted them to do it right. To me today, there is no right way to do this. The way I used to sponsor when I first got sober to now is very different. I used to tell you what you needed to do for your gun relapse. Today, I try to connect with people. You get to choose. And at the end of the day, I get to stay sober. I get to get out of my head. I believe that we don't do anything without a payoff, whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing. And so in sponsorship, it's one of the most beautiful things in my life. I get to interact with the fellowship. I get to be of service to people. I get to see the light turn on that Amy was talking about. And it's beautiful. And that is the presence of something greater than myself, because I couldn't do it for me, and you better believe I can't do it for you. Nobody can. And it doesn't matter what you have or what you're going through. I mean, life sucks, right? Life happens. We go through tough times. And I think the reason we relapse is, well, I know it's because we're not, in spiritual, right? We're not connected. But I think for most of us, it's because we don't know how to handle our emotions. We get emotionally overloaded and we go back to the same patterns of behavior. And so we go to the transfer, go to the drug. And we can stay in those 6 spots for a long time. And so today, I mean, I have actively worked a program from day one to today. Like, I have always had a service commitment. I've always had a home group. I've always sponsored women, men. I've always had a sponsor. Right? And I say yes, I show up. And I struggle with that, right? Sometimes I put too much on my plate and I have to say, I can't. Because if I can't pick up the phone, I'm not keeping them sober. Hopefully they reach out to somebody else. And I don't have all the answers. You know, I have never been sober this long. I've never been in a job this long. I've never been in a marriage or a relationship as long as I am. But I have people around me with experiences that show me the way. And that's because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I belong, right? And that spirituality is free. And that mental obsession has been gone. And so the biggest thing for me is being around people who can be honest and vulnerable. I need people to show me that they don't do it perfectly. Because in the past, that has set me up, right? Because, you know, certain points of my recovery, it's like, I shouldn't be having this thought. I shouldn't be having this behavior. Well, why not? Why not? I get to work. Right? And so if you're struggling in here, I always say fight it. Fight it. You know, if you're challenging somebody, it's probably because you're really looking for what works for you. Don't just check the boxes. It's not going to work. It never has for me. It doesn't matter what you look like or what you do or where you came from. This is free to anybody. But you have to keep doing it. And you have to keep growing. And you have to keep taking responsibility. And you get to have a hell of a lots of fun. Thank you guys for letting me be here. Have a good day.